There's a specific moment that happens for a lot of people in their 40s. Their income is at its best it's ever been. The career is established. Maybe the dream house is there. Maybe the family is there. Maybe you're still building those things, but by most visible measures, you're doing well. Maybe something feels off. Not wrong exactly, just not as far ahead as maybe the income should have gotten you, or maybe your net worth says that you're in a good spot, but you don't always feel that. You run faster and faster, but that piece still somewhat eludes. I see this every single week. And almost every time it comes down to the same thing. Nothing is connected. It's all fragmented. So your 40s are the highest leverage financial decade of your life. And that's why I'm making this video. You have the most income, but the most complexity and most decisions happening in family, life happening simultaneously. Every one of those decisions either compounds into real wealth or the consistent underwhelm that we find people that are 10 years beyond you. So once you understand that, really understand that, everything this time in your money changes. Most financial advice is built for two moments. When you're starting out, when you're retiring. Nobody talks about what happens in between. And what happens in between, specifically in your 40s, is the most financially consequential decade of your entire life. And here's why. This is what most people's financial picture looks like when we meet them in their 40s. They're making great money. They're probably at their peak income they've ever made, but the peak complexity is there, peak responsibility is there. What it starts to look like is they've got investments, and often maybe a person who's managing them, or maybe they're doing it themselves. They have a 401k. They pay a lot in tax, but they don't talk to their CPA. They know they need to update their estate plan or even do one. Someone from college sold them some insurance, and their kids' sports suck most of their spare time away, so they feel very busy. Now, I don't love the term busy, not because it isn't true, but because of the defensive and costly position it often puts us in. Naturally, people in their 40s are struggling with a lack of clarity. So let's start with providing some clarity. A lot of people want to have a benchmark. Am I tracking well? Am I behind? And here's the reality. Only a personalized plan can tell us that. But here's an interesting benchmark that we've used with clients just early on to help them get a grasp of where am I at on the spectrum of things. So this is a framework that was built and put into a book called The Millionaire Next Door, which I highly recommend. They have a simple equation. Take your age times your income, divide by 10. And there's 3 tiers. Basically, one's crushing it, the ones that are typically kind of in the middle, and the ones that would be considered under accumulated. This is an example of a 45-year-old, making $500,000 a year. We would expect to see their wealth somewhere between 2 to 4 million if they're on the upper end. 2.25 being the considered average in this benchmark. I don't love this other than using it as a benchmark to start from. We need to go to a personalized plan to actually tell us where we're tracking. We have scenarios where they're at 1.5 million in this example, and they're tracking great because their goals are dictating that. And we just left a meeting earlier today where we met with someone who's 45 with $25 million, and they're actually behind, as crazy as that sounds, but their goals are dictating their wealth needs. Here's the thing that nobody tells you about your 40s. This isn't the decade of just work harder anymore. It's a decade of now working smarter with what you already have. The income is there, the complexity is also there. And so the question is anyone actually optimizing any of it? So most people get in their 40s, they're just managing their finances, but very few of them are optimizing. And the gap between those two things at this level is very significant. See, managing means, the bills are getting paid. 401k is getting maxed out, CPA is getting the return done, and there's probably, again, an advisor maybe sending them a quarterly statement. So everything looks fine. But optimizing means that we're getting tax strategy connecting to the investment strategy. We've got equity comp has a plan where the business and their personal finances are looked at together. See, these decisions right now are being made with the next 10 years in mind. The reality is we see it all the time. People have the same income, completely different outcomes. So 5 things that will change your mindset once you understand this crucial connectivity piece. Thing number 1, stop letting your spending decisions be based entirely on income alone. This is controversial. If you're listening to this, you're probably making good money. And frankly, budgeting probably doesn't work for you. We're also likely at a spot where we can't just base spending on income without considering the wealth repercussions. The reality is some people are behind. You might be making $700,000 a year, but you need to spend like you're making $300,000 a year, or it's not going to end pretty. But some of you are way ahead and you don't even know it, or even more distinctly feel it. So therefore you might make $700,000 and you're spending like you're making $300,000 and you're missing out on some things. A great example, they don't own the house that they really want. They may not share that right away, but in the back of their mind, they're thinking, gosh, I'd like this to be different, but I just don't know where I stand. When we understand where you stand, we can start making decisions around spending that are wealth and income driven, not purely does this fit into the budget. One of our favorite things is helping people get to the house they want. If they're well capitalized, meaning they have enough money for all the goals, and they're tracking to have enough money for all the goals, I should say, we should buy that house. And this is a critical piece that folks in their 40s need to understand. Thing number 2, you got to realize your 401k is not the financial strategy. So, maxing out your 401k, that feels like the responsible move. And yes, it is, but up to a point. At this income level, the 401k is just a tool. Most people in their 40s are not using the whole toolkit. Just within their 401k, there's the Mega Backdoor Roth. We also have cash balance plans. We have direct indexing strategies. We have all these different opportunities just sitting there that often are unused. Quick note, if you're in your 40s and you're recognizing your own financial picture in any of what we're covering here today, that's exactly the conversation that we have every single day. If you would like us to take a look at your situation, there's a link in the description. Book a call. Thing number 3, you stop managing finances in pieces and start treating them as one picture. By your 40s, you've accumulated complexity. You've got a 401k probably, you've got maybe a brokerage account, you've got business interests or equity comp, estate plan, signed up 5 years ago, you've never visited, you got a CPA who files the return, but you never talk to them, financial advisor who manages a portfolio, maybe you talk once a year. But see, none of these things are actually talking to one another. Frankly, the cost of that can be many 6 figures. So I want to show you a visual example of what we mean by getting things talking to one another. Here's most of our clients' financial situation in a nutshell. They've got either equity comp or some business value in a business. They got serious needs for tax planning and tax strategy. Retirement is naturally on their mind. They want to make sure they plan for that. They've got investments that need to be managed, including real estate. They've got estate planning needs either done or need updating. And again, I kind of, joked around earlier, someone sold them some insurance at one point. How do all these things fit together? A lot of times they're so fragmented that when we come in and we start with the goals, and then we bring it all together into one view, one plan, some pretty amazing things can come out of that. Thing number 4, you have to understand that your equity is the biggest financial asset, and that really needs a strategy too. Here's the reality. In most cases, executives have equity through some sort of equity comp plan. And if you're a business owner, it's enterprise value. These things, they not only need to be in the plan, they need to be front and center in the plan. That's why in my connecting the dots picture, we put that first purposely. I tend to find this as a bit of an afterthought in most people's financial plans, especially by a lot of advisors, but it's really the 2x multiple in a lot of people's plans. So if this is done right and this goes right, this can often double plus their end landing spot. $5 million person might become 10 million because it worked. 10 million might become 20 million. Why wouldn't that be a strong emphasis? Lastly, but certainly not leastly, is thing number 5. It's health. Now, a lot of folks would say that's not really in the financial discussion, but they're very connected. We have to realize that you have to start protecting your health like it's a financial asset. 2 reasons. One, it's super expensive to be unhealthy in your 60s and 70s. But really, what we're finding is, unfortunately, our clients who are arriving at 55 and 65, they aren't necessarily feeling the way they were hoping to feel. And they don't get to even use the money in the way they thought they'd want to use it in their 40s. I think that's an important thing to plug into this conversation. And that's why we do full picture financial planning, talking about things like health and faith and how are those things doing. We can't miss those things purely on the road for chasing money. Here's what I see all the time. Someone gets to this point in the conversation. They see the leverage of this decade, but they understand what's actually at stake. And they do one of 2 things. Either they get overwhelmed and do nothing, or they try to fix everything at once, therefore really not fixing anything at all. Neither of those is the answer. The answer is one decision, not 20. One. What is the single most important thing you need to do right now? In our opinion, that is a full picture plan. Full picture plan lets you know where you stand, and you start to break out those action steps that over time get accomplished. You eat an elephant one bite at a time. Here's what I want to leave you with. Your 40s are not the decade to work harder. They're the decade to work smarter. The income is there. The complexity is also there. The question is, anyone optimizing this? Is anyone getting these things connected? Most people in their 40s, that's not the case. People who look back on their 40s and say they made the most of it financially, they didn't necessarily always make more. They certainly didn't always work harder. They just made that one important decision earlier. They stopped managing their finances in pieces, started treating them as one picture. Tax strategy connected, equity comp and businesses are front and center. Everything looked at together with wealth, 10 plus years in mind. That's what this decade is for. Not just earning, building, protecting, optimizing. You're in the highest leverage decade of your financial life right now. The question is whether you're using it. Everything we've covered today applies to anyone in their 40s building wealth. But if you're in 500,000 or more, the stakes of every single thing we talked about are completely different. Tax complexity is different. The investment vehicle is different. The cost of getting it wrong is different. And in 2026 specifically, there's some planning windows that open right now, won't be open forever. And that's exactly what we start to break down in our next video. I'll see you there.